I'm Tracy, Isacke. I run the relationships with all of the corporates for Silicon Valley Bank. So managing the relationships with the corporate venture groups, the corporate M&A groups and the corporate innovation groups. And I've been with the bank for about a year. I joined from Telefonica where I ran their corporate venture group, so I've kind of sat on both sides of the fence. And actually in my career spent many years at Xerox and at a small startup. So I've kind of had experience in many of the different areas of different styles of businesses and how they might adopt policies for diversity. So we can come on and I may inject some comments of my own as we talk a little later. But let me just hand over, Lisa, to you for you to do an introduction. That would be great.
Sure. So I'm Lisa Lambert. I have two roles here. One is as founder of an organization that's a nonprofit called Upward. It's an organization that I started back in 2013, focused on executive women advancement, so female executives advancing into the senior ranks of organizations. I started it with the idea that because there were so many senior professional women that aren't making it all the way up to the top, this would be a way for us to come together in community and collaborate and support, proactively help one another advance. So that's a very important project for me. It is a nonprofit. I'm very excited to talk about that today. I also work at Intel Capital, and I'm a managing director of our software and services practice there, and have been doing that for 15 years, so a veteran of venture investing. And worked at Intel for 18 years in total. Started off as a product marketing engineer and got my undergrad in engineering. So definitely a software engineering kind of a person, but have a lot of experience in investing as well.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yes, everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Eileen Tanghal, and I am a member of Upward. It's a wonderful organization. Thank you to Lisa for starting it. I currently work for ARM, where I'm heading up the New Business Exploration Group as part of New Business Ventures. You will notice ARM and Intel are on the same panel. This is a topic that we both care about, so the competitors are sitting together talking about it. As for my background, I have a EE degree from MIT. I joined a startup that went public in semiconductors. I've mostly been in semiconductors. I was a financial venture capitalist here in London, apprenticed under the great Herman Hauser, who is our speaker next. Worked for Kennett Partners and then moved into the corporate venturing world, first at Applied Materials and now at ARM. So I have the perspective maybe of being one of the few female financial VCs for a while, and again, one of the few, but at least more female corporate venture VCs.
Yeah, and I think we did actually comment that I think there are 2 panels today that are all female and many that have not even a female on the panel. So maybe just a suggestion for next year, maybe. So just as a start, one of the things we're looking at here is the difference perhaps between the way that the corporate world is addressing diversity and still some of the challenges that we may be seeing in the venture world and in, new startups. First of all, what do you guys see as the differences between what corporates are doing and what's happening in the venture community? Maybe Eileen, start with you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time as a financial VC. I will say, however, that financial venture capitalists really breed this culture of heroism. There's very few people in a VC firm, so everyone there, if you're an associate to make up to partner, you're sort of in this competitive mode that you have to find the deal that makes the 10x so that you can get up to partner. And that breeds a certain type of culture, maybe not as collaborative, more competitive. Not all venture capitalists, Herman, I'm not saying that. Evidence is necessarily like that, but a lot of them are, right? So, awkward, your former boss there. But whereas in a corporation, it's about collaboration, it's about many people coming together to make something when it is not about I. So I think that's one of the positives. I will say kind of the negatives. One, I had this great experience at Amadeus, but again, you'll find, especially in the Sand Hill Road VCs, most of the women there are the secretaries or receptionists, and Herman doesn't know this, but once there was an entrepreneur who did ask me where his jacket was, and I know I look like the receptionist, but I don't know where it is. So, and in the Valley, where the corporations do have more women, so you will find more people, director level women you can speak to. Lisa's absolutely right. If you look around when you were first starting out, and then you move to director, then you move to MD, and then you move to VP, the peers of women they just are not there. So kind of, what has been done. I mean, look at Lisa's organization started as, I think there were just 30 or 40 of us in that room in Sequoia, and it's just grown massively. So I think, maybe the corporates like Intel and ARM as well have empowered its women to start things like this. And we have similar initiatives, nothing as big as Upward yet, but hopefully one day as big as Upward. So, yeah.
And actually, I'll come to you in a second, Elizabeth. You were just saying yesterday that actually at ARM, the population of the female population is quite balanced. In fact, you even get the equal lines for the bathrooms.
I think it's interesting. ARM is at least in the San Jose office is more representative of the population of California, rather, especially for a semiconductor company. It was the number of, let's say, female VPs at ARM is higher than I've ever seen, which is really nice for me, right?
And Lisa, what's your thoughts?
I think corporations are more aware of the disparity between men and women in their firms, especially in tech. You may be aware our CEO, Brian Kruchanek, announced at CES this year, January, that we were going to engage on helping to change that disparity, right? Which is twofold. One is, how do we fix it in our own company? And then externally, how do we influence our industry to adapt new behaviors? So he announced a $300 million diversity and technology fund targeting a number of different areas. And I can talk very little about one that I'm personally involved in. We're going to be announcing an effort to invest in women and minority-led tech companies. So our CEO has teased that out in a couple of his recent keynotes. We're going to be formally announcing it, so I can't talk about it in any detail, but it's a part of the overarching program that he outlined in January. We want to improve the pay disparity. We want to improve and increase, the number of women and minorities in our company, and then we want to be a role model for our industry. And I think corporates feel a greater degree of responsibility for that because, we're publicly held companies, that are regulated industries. And I think more importantly, we feel that because half the population is women, and a growing percentage of the population across all countries, but especially in America, are minorities, that if we don't engage those communities, then what are we going to look like when it's majority minority in the U.S.? Or how are we going to really grow our GDP if we haven't expanded the workforce by including more women and minorities in the workforce? So, there are real practical business issues associated with it. And I think also many studies have shown that with diversity comes better returns, better profitability, better return on your investment capital, better decision making. Having that dynamic is actually very helpful. I think to our brains, it's very unnatural because we kind of like, in our brains, homogeneity. We like same. But in practice, in terms of running a company and implementing, a business plan, diversity actually is useful. So to me, it's a practical thing.
And would you ever go as far as to say we should go for quota? Some other countries have gone for quotas, and I know certainly in Norway they're saying that actually they've got to the quota that they're looking for, certainly on boards of corporates. But, what's your view on quotas?
Well, I'd like to think that what I've achieved and actually what my parents achieved was because of quotas. My parents, who were technologists from the Philippines, got visas to come to the United States because they needed more chemists. So that was a quota that got them to go from where they were to here and, kind of add to the U.S. economy, not here, UK, but the U.S. to the economy, and then kind of had their child that grew up there, paid taxes, contribute to the economy. So why do I believe in quotas, though, when it comes to women? It's because of the unconscious bias. You need a way to combat unconscious bias. And I can't think of a better way, unfortunately, to do that. And you know, I saw, I don't know if anyone knows the Gina Davis Institute on Gender Equality, probably you do, Lisa. So she did this survey, and she gives this talk about how if you look at movies, so if everybody watches movies, Hollywood movies, and you look in crowd scenes, almost every crowd scene of every movie has what percentage of women in the crowd scene?
50%.
Pardon?
50%.
30%. So you go, why is that? Do women not like to see things when they're happening in crowd scenes? That's odd. And it's just this pervasive thing in movies. It's women in crowd scenes are always 30%. And when she went to the directors and she said, did you know this was happening? I mean, nobody knew. And she has this theory that this 30% is what causes, you know, this 30% number to be stagnant in terms of the number of females doctors, the number of female in Congress, et cetera. So there's this unconscious sort of what we see on television of being 30% is normal. So when we see 30% of women around us, that seems normal because if you're, especially in the US, if you're a very TV consumption nation, then you have this unconscious bias that 30% is okay. So if you know that, how do you combat it? Well, you make the quota higher so that 30% is not okay. So that's why I believe in quotas, is because there is unconscious bias going on, and you need a way to combat it.
What's your view, Lisa, on quotas?
I don't know that I have a view. I have a view for anything that helps women and minorities advance is a positive thing in my view. That's legal, right? Not anything illegal, but anything that's legal. And I guess I say that because there's so many examples. Europe is a great example. They've taken action around women on boards, right? And so there is a minimum. You have to have at least one woman on every publicly traded company board. And the performance of those boards has actually improved since they enacted that law. And so, you know, again, you got to believe that with diversity, if all the studies are right, you're going to get better decision making, you're going to get better results, you're going to get profitable businesses, that it's in our best interest. But if to Eileen's point, if the bias is preventing you from diversifying because, you know, homogeneity is our comfort zone, then you need to do something proactive. I like what BK is doing, our CEO. I think there are other CEOs that are taking bold stands. But I think, you know, use whatever resources that you have available to you to affect change. And so, yeah, I think quotas make sense if you can do it effectively and consistently across the population.
And I think the studies kind of say, you know, even on boards, you kind of need 3 women to make a difference because, you know, 1 woman is kind of a little bit of a token. 2 actually become known as a coffee group where the men can ignore them because they think they're covered. And 3 is actually the point at which there is enough. In a way, it's kind of at the 30% point where it becomes statistically relevant. But that's a really interesting point on the movie scenes. I didn't know that. I think one of the challenges, and I've certainly been at a number of events, and I love Upward too. I'm certainly a member of that. But I think one of the challenges recently, I was at an event, the Young Global Leaders event, and we went into the room and there's 25 women around the room talking about some of the challenges, and there was one guy. And the guy said, we can't solve the problem like this. We can't solve the problem just with 25 women and one guy. We have to get a more balanced representation both ways to solve the problem. So just interestingly, I'd love your views on that.
Yes, of course, and look at what the CEO of Intel is doing. I mean, the men are in these powerful positions, so of course they're the ones who need to that have the ability to make the biggest difference. So, I mean, I think there's no question that you need men participating.
How do we engage them better then? What could we do?
I think first, you know, try not to make them feel so defensive, perhaps. So it's not a, you know, gosh, you know, you are all horrible and you're making us feel terrible. I mean, that's not the case. Really get to their human side. I mean, men probably have daughters. Which men of you have daughters, right?
Daughters.
So daughters.
Everybody has a mother, right?
Somebody has a mother. I mean, chances are, you know, you're humans. You want your daughters to succeed. So, you know, if you can make a better place for your child to succeed, you know, you're going to do it. So I think you sort of speak to them as fathers, as sons, and engage them that way, as opposed to, you know, life is unfair for me because of you. You know, that's sort of how I would do it. And then just, I'm a very big believer on unconscious bias training. Really, really big believer in that, and think everyone, everyone is guilty of it, including myself. I mean, so I think that if you're more aware of, and then seeing things from other people's lenses, back to your previous quote, I post recs to try to get more women to apply to jobs, and I keep finding that they keep self-selecting themselves out of the job. If they do not meet 95% of what is on the spec, they don't apply. Whereas men consider the spec just, something that is interesting. It's recommendation. And I mean, I get all these resumes from men that, I go, did they read this? It doesn't matter. If you know that, then you have to skew things a certain way so that, because women they do tend to self-select themselves out. So back to the quotas and realize, if you as a man are in a hiring position, realize that and see if you can make a change.
And certainly, Upward is a great support mechanism for women, but do you think we could do more to sort of help each other?
Well, I think I do think we can do more to help each other. I mean, the reason I started it is because, every meeting that I went to, I was generally the only woman, whether, I'm talking with other venture capitalists or whether I'm hearing a pitch from entrepreneurs. And so, you see that every day for 15 years and you think, well, there's something we got to do about this, right? So at the very least, we can come together in community and start proactively looking for ways to support one another. It's kind of the good old girls network is what I call it, right? We really need that. We need that for a number of reasons, for job opportunities, to broaden our perspective, to broaden and extend our reach, et cetera. So there's a long list of why we need to come together in community. I think we do also need to engage men since, if you look at the data, in the US, Fortune 500 companies, 5% of the CEOs are women. 5%. And 13 to 14% are women that are in the executive office. So if you're not engaging the men, then you're losing an opportunity to really affect change, because it's not going to happen without the male population agreeing. And I do always say everybody has a mother. Many of us have wives and daughters and sisters and cousins and nieces, and so we want to create a better world for them. That's the emotional side of it. I think we need that argument, but I think men are also analytical, and we do need the business facts. What's the data that supports that diversity is actually helpful from a business perspective? There's a ton of data that says that it's very helpful from a business perspective. So I think you bring the analytic data that supports why you get better decisions, why you get better returns, and you bring the emotional data to kind of prick the heart and encourage them to think about the future they're creating for their daughters and their nieces and their cousins and such. And I think hopefully you get some action.
Listen, we don't have a lot of time left, but at one of your events there was a quote by a very famous VC lady who was just saying that actually in the community she'd noticed that men actually tell each other how great they are. And they kind of go, you know what, you rock, no, you rock, no, you rock. And actually, women are not really great at doing that, but I just want to say, you guys rock.
You rock.